nii, ja lähme siis edasi tänase seminari peaesineja juurde. Aarhusi linnaarhitekt Stephen D. Willacy peaks olema meil praegu nii-öelda veebisillaga ühendatud. Steven?
I think I'm being linked up.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Yes, hello. How are you?
Very nice to be with you all.
Okay, so we are ready for your lecture.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here with you all. Can you see the first slide? You can see the first slide, hopefully. Can you confirm that?
Yes, we can see you.
Right, good.
Yeah.
I'd just like to say, I'd like to talk about Aarhus and about the way we're trying to build a livable city. And I'm trying to change the slide at the moment, but that's just not happening. I seem to have gone out of it now.
No, you're here.
I'm here?
Yeah.
It's just I can't see the slides myself.
Oh.
Yeah, it was all set up, beautifully set up. Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Good. Is the map on now?
Yes, it is a map, yeah.
Oh, right. It's just so that you can see, many of you probably don't know where Denmark is, and I thought it would be useful to illustrate that this is where I am with the heart, and I'd like to extend our greetings to your lovely country and also your city, Tallinn. And likewise, the two national flags. I thought it was just it's almost like a birthday cake, that building, right? So I thought we'd put some nice flags on top. I've been brought up as an architect at the architect schools, and I remember your building in Tallinn, in Viipuri, this building by Alvar Aalto, and we have a beautiful building in Aarhus by Arne Jacobsen. And I think it's fantastic that we have such buildings locally. When we talk about developing our city, I have to talk about the governance and the stewardship of the city. And this is my older man, Benjamin Simsak. He's from the Venstre party in Denmark. We have a council with something like 22,000 staff members. And we have many different departments. I'm in this department of the technical services and environment. And we work with all the different physical aspects of the city. When we talk about Aarhus, we talk about Greater Aarhus, where we talk also about, I think there's 13 different councils working together, and approximately 980,000 people in that. But as a region, the central region of Denmark, we're approximately 1.3 million people with 19 different councils. I'll come back to that in a minute, but this is important in terms of being a city with a little bit of clout compared with somewhere like Copenhagen. I'd like to talk about this sustainable agenda for the city. We're all facing these SDG goals, and we're working with them in all our different magistrate departments, and I try to talk about them in the different projects we're working about. The area we live in the eastern part of Jutland, there's approximately 1.4 million people, and the city itself is growing with approximately 5,000 new citizens every year. So we are, I think Copenhagen's growing with 12,000 citizens a year. But in a city where we currently are 350,000 people, this is something which means a lot for us when we're working towards a town, roughly in 2050, where we're going to be a lot more citizens living in there. The diagram on the right-hand side shows the citizens' pyramid, and you can see in the age group 20 to 29, we have quite a large beam that goes both for the men and the women. That means that we have a very university city, and we're approximately 52,000 students going to the university, and with a population of 350,000 people, that's quite a large portion. So we would like to level it out more, so we're keeping more of this younger generation in our community. Now this map illustrates how Aarhus has grown since 1954. The dark area is from 1954, the red area is 2000, and those yellow areas are areas which I'm working with currently in our city planning, where we're going to be going to absorb this large numbers of population. But you can see since the 50s, the city's footprint has grown threefold. And it was an explosion after the war, and it's urban sprawl. Lots of single-family homes and many social housing blocks positioned along the outskirts of the city. And of course we have these industrial estates too, also located on the outskirts of the city. So this is quite important when we talk about how to work forward, because when we talk about the way we want to develop the architecture and the city qualities in the town, I'm trying to integrate this into our new policy for architecture and city qualities, or livable city. There are several strategies we're working simultaneously. We talk about intelligent growth, and what we mean by that is that we would like to invest in public transport, and along those public transport corridors, you can see on the right-hand side, the blue lines of the light railway line we just started using in 2017, and we would like to grow our city along these corridors here. I hope you can see that hand moving around on the screen, but this is where we're talking about intensifying development. The red line is the second stage, and we're talking about whether or not it should be light railway or BRT. But the map in the middle is the important one, because that shows that we have many satellite towns, some of them along that light railway line, and in the north as well, but others which are not. But we have to think about the idea of social cohesion and seeing the council as a whole, not just as in a city area, but we have to have growth in all the different communities. We have generation changes, different age groups. We want to encourage families to stay in the council, and that means we have to invest in the schools too. The image on the left shows brownfield sites. I kind of want to talk about quite a few of those, because this is where we've been focusing a lot of our attention, and you'll see that in the areas mostly within the city. We're moving functions out of the city. For example, hospitals. We have 3 hospital sites, and they've been moved out to the outskirts of the city, to North Europe's largest hospital area in Skyview, which means that those previous sites are available for development. So for many years, the city's been split up. It's been split up functionally, where you can't talk about living one area, working another, and recreation another. And we're trying to reduce that distance between them. And there's talk of 15-minute cities. I like to talk about Aarhus as a 10-minute city, because everything's very easily available, with either by cycling or walking. But we'd like to have that recreation and living and working closer to each other. So we're less reliant on vehicular transport and more reliant on public transport. And this will also enable us to think about a more healthy and encourage well-being in the city by creating more physical activity and also a more lively city areas within the city. So we have to talk about lively, sustainable neighbourhoods. A lot of you probably recognise this diagram, especially mobility people. It's a diagram, just finished a Master of Science at the London School of Economics relating to cities, and we talked about mobility a lot. It's a big driver for the way we think of the city in the future. I think most cities are facing challenges. Oh, something happened there. Are you still there?
Yeah, we're here.
I just lost the image of what I was showing. I can't see the images. So I don't know where I am in the presentation, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get it back on. Is it back again?
Yes.
Good. Atlanta is a car city, and you can see the red lines there where they have public transport. There's very little of it. There's 8%, whilst Berlin is 68%. And something similar happens in Barcelona. And we're trying to encourage this type of infrastructure. And when we talk about densification of the city, we're looking at lots of different models. The three illustrations on the right-hand side, taken from the design company for planning and placemaking, illustrate the same number of square meters positioned in completely different ways. So we're working on lots of different strategies, different parts of the city. Every second year, we ask the citizens of Aarhus, what makes Aarhus a good city for you? And we've been doing this for the last 4 years, and there's a general tendency happening. And the most important for people is the relationship to cultural life. Second one is the relation to nature and green areas. The third is the fact that Aarhus is the size of it, and you can ask a question, why? You say it's because it's not too big and it's not too small. Then, of course, there's a lot of students in the town who think that's important. And interestingly now, we're talking about, in fifth place, the atmosphere of the city. That's become that's jumped up from a 10th place last time to this in this area. And this is good for me, being a city architect, where I think it's very important when we talk about the way we associate with our neighbourhoods and parts of the city. I'd like to go into some of these themes in more detail. Of course, this is the picture from the hinterland looking towards the bay. Beautiful landscape. Within 15 minutes from the centre near the cathedral, you can be out in this lake area. As this map shows, we have this beautiful forest, beechwood forest to the south, and to the north we have a forest as well. And we have beautiful beaches along this coastline here. So 10 minutes from the cathedral, you can be in these beautiful areas. When we talk about developing our city, this is a principle we've been working with whilst I've been a city architect for the last 8 years. We're trying to focus more and more upon the people of the city. This is very much in accordance with the thoughts of Jan Gehl. And we're looking at the city life. We'd like to talk about that first. Then we talk about this urban realm where we design the spaces, and then we design the buildings. It's not been that way for a long time. And when we have a developer coming into us, we ask them, we would like to focus upon what type of qualities your project gives back to the city. This is the image of Jan Gehl, of course, still going strong. I had a lecture with him 2 months ago. I made this pyramid to illustrate a point. It's a general point, in as much as the building in the background there, we have lots of these buildings around in our community. There's social housing, where the buildings have been the focus, and there are urban space, there's a little bit of that, which is often called space left over after planning slope. And then you can maybe talk about the urban realm, the urban life. We've turned it on its head. We would like to talk about the urban life, then the urban space and buildings. Of course, it's a spiral thing, back and forth, but we'd like to make this focus. What does the building work? How does it work for the people and the citizens and the spaces between the buildings? So this thing about culture, we were the European Capital of Culture in 2017. Maybe some of your participants in the conference came to us during that year. It was a big event for us. We were very proud, and it went very well, very successful. But it's become much more than just culture. It's actually a kind of glue or a gel that brings people together, and it's certainly put Aarhus on the map. And we see it as a connecting device. And often we have this kind of the green banana, call it here, with a kind of lots of different cultural activities along that route. But now, through the city, the harbour developments, we've actually included a lot more functions in the water districts. And we can see lots of synergies going on here, like this. We've cleared away piers, we've moved the industry away, and we've made it much more available for recreative activities on the water. We have a beautiful conservatory in town, and we've just built this a few years back by Sif Muller, this conservatory for palm trees. When the first building was built, this was also by Sif Muller, the architects, there was roughly 20,000 citizens visiting this building a year. Since this was built, we have 80,000 citizens coming here a year. Right next to that, we have the old town, the Gammelby, which is an open-air museum. The buildings moved from all over Denmark and rebuilt here, and it's a constant development. And we're always looking at how to develop these tourist attractions, and at the moment they're building a completely new entrance building by Kubo Architects. So it's a modern building, and when you arrive in that building, you're starting in the newer times, and as you go through the park or the area, you're going further and further back in time. You can see in the background there's the old town, the roofs in the back here, and in the forefront we have Aarhus with your rainbow panorama. And right next to that, the first real major cultural building in Aarhus, the concert house, designed by Ken Richter. This is in the central part of the town. I'm taking this picture from the town hall tower, looking down on this beautiful square and park, and this magnificent building by Olaf Elias and the Rainbow Panorama and Schmidt and Lassen Architects. It certainly put Aarhus on the map. And there's just some beautiful pictures here. I just think it's just quite extraordinary that art and architecture can actually meet in such a way and become a kind of magnet for the citizens and tourists. But we can't stand and just hang around. There's always conscious of the numbers of people visiting the buildings, and this project here called Next Level, designed by Schmidt and Lassen and James Terrell, the light artist, is being planned, and they've just got the green light for the go-ahead to make this wonderful project, which is underground. It's a big dome underground, but we're working with daylight with this wonderful artist called James Terrell. And these are just some images the architects and the artists have made, where they look at the way daylight can be perceived. Another fantastic project which is just really getting going is called Kongelund. We're planning a new football stadium. Big vision competitions just about to kick off. So if anyone's interested in talent and participating, please go in and have a look. But it's a big area where we talk about synergies in the natural world. And Tivoli, Friheden, is located in this area. And I just have to say it's a major tourist attraction. And at the moment they're planning a new concert hall in this beautiful park area, which could look something like this. And every 7 years, each one of these different activities are planning new buildings or new functions coming in constantly to encourage people to come and visit them again. And one of the most beautiful of them all is this Moscow Museum, which is located just south of Aarhus, 5-6 kilometers from the cathedral, designed by Henning Lass and Christine Jensen, in a beautiful, very Ice Age landscape, terminal moraine. And we said at the time, how are you going to position a building in this magnificent landscape? And these fantastic architects came with this wonderful idea of just lifting the ground up and slotting some buildings underneath it and functions underneath it. It's a fantastic place, well worth a visit. But smaller projects can do it too. This is the continuous bridge designed by some local young architects in Aarhus. We take it down every winter and bring it up every summer, and this is the place where you get married, or you have your marriage photographs taken, obviously. It's a magnet for citizens coming from all over Aarhus and further afield. So it's not just an important thing for us as a council. We can also see that private companies like this one selling this building, selling all sorts of different goods, has actually invested in this interactive facade, where they have a beautiful lighting scheme designed by Collision Architects. And on the roof of it, they've actually transformed the roof into an urban landscape. Theatre, outdoor theatre here with a stage. And in the first year, they had 1.5 million guests. This is quite extraordinary. But it means you're bringing people into your shop. And you can see they're looking over towards that beautiful palm house right in the middle of the picture here. And you can actually go out on that, I call it a diving board, and walk out onto it. There's a glass flooring. I've only been there at the opening where luckily I had some champagne, so I actually went on and went off again very quickly, but it's a major attraction for many citizens. So, coming on to this connection with the nature, this is fundamental for us in Aarhus, is that this harbour front here, in previous times, was completely hidden away from the old heritage city. And we've actually, the picture on the left here illustrates how the old river, the street's called Old Boulevard, the river street. But when I came to Aarhus in the 1980s, that's what it looked like. And you didn't know where the river was. And so clever city architects, planners, and the politicians decided to open it up again. It was covered over, the last part was covered over in the 1950s for health reasons, but now the water's much cleaner, so it's opened up again. It's completely revolutionized the inner part of the city. It's an incredible place. When they planned it, no one wanted it because that was the main road into the harbour area, but they said all the shops would go bankrupt, but obviously that's not the case. These beautiful recreation areas have been designed and become very livable. Lots of different spaces happening within the one big space here in Willacy. And this is the other view looking towards the cathedral in the background there. So this whole harbour area is one of those brownfield sites. It's something like 4 kilometres in its length from the top right down to the south, and that picture on the left. In the 90s they had an international competition which was won by Knud Fleirland and Peter Tygård. Peter Tygård is a partner in Henning Larsen's office, in many projects around the world, very successful. And we've worked for that plan now for the last 20-25 years. And it's an important thing for us in terms of developing the harbour area. I'll come back to that in a short while. But we're currently working on extending we moved the container harbour from the northern part out into the bay. And there where the numbers 1, 2 and 3 on the diagram on the right illustrate where we're talking about extending this container harbour. It's the most important container harbour in Denmark. 66% of all goods container come through this harbour, on the in and out. So it's a very important destination and a working area. So roughly it looks something like this in the early 2010s. All the buildings have been removed here, and we're currently building some buildings down there, but it looks like this today. And we have the library in the foreground. It's called Dokken. This is, in the first year alone, we had 1.3 million guests. It's not just a library, it's a multifunctional house, and strategically located between the harbour and the river, which is opened up. So it's a very symbolic and important part. And we have a university here, the University Faculty of Engineering, and we've cleared all the buildings away apart from these very important heritage buildings, so it's become much more accessible to look out towards the bay. So this is, the red line illustrates the harbour front today, whilst the old line, the white lines here, illustrate what it used to look like. So you can see we've actually removed the pier, so this whole area here becomes recreative and made it much more accessible. So the water's brought in here to this old Skoleguden, which is the closest link to the cathedral. So we have some beautiful extended views here now, right out to the harbour. So it looked like this back in the 80s, and it looks like this today. And I have to say, everyone was against doing this at the time, because look how many lanes there are for the cars and the train. We've cut it down just to 2 lanes, one way, in 2 ways. Of course, we have to turn left or right, but it's become a light railway line, and we built this canal here, connecting the water into the harbour front again. No one complains now. It looked like this, you can see. I sometimes show these pictures to senior citizens, and they say, yeah, they call this the good old days, and there's a lot of cars, but you can see that beautiful, magnificent building in the centre here, the old customs building, where there's vehicles in front here. Now I call this a little piece of Venice, because it's shared space, there's no curbs, there's only cars available for coming to these two buildings for servicing. So it's just become absolutely beautiful. And I know people still think there's waiting time of the cars along the road here is longer, but it's actually become very much more accessible. You can walk across the lines here today, and the cycling path here. It's just turned out beautifully. A considerable investment. I know many other countries, but sometimes just build buildings on this magnificent site. We've decided to keep it open. And thankfully, through the assistance of Rio Daniel, which is a philanthropist company, private company, we've managed to convince them to invest in these projects. So the library building, the Docken, together with this harbourfront, they gave us 750,000 kroner, million kroner. Sorry, 750 million, and the Docken itself and everything together cost 2 billion kroner. So it's an incredible investment, but it's paid back many times. So when we look out to where the old container harbour was on Aarhus, this is what it looks like currently. All these different buildings are taking place, and just in a couple of years' time, this tower will be completed, right out on that harbour front. The foundations are completed now, and they're building up the building itself. And I'd just like to go into this in a little bit more detail, because obviously this is where we have had incredible investments. And sometimes I'm asked, when I'm doing these talks, how is this possible for such a small community as Aarhus to be able to carry out these types of projects? And I have to say, I start with that picture where I talk about governance and stewardship, that the council has had this continuity throughout these. I think we've had 5 different councils each of 4 years, with different groupings and politics going on, but they've been continuous, and we've adjusted the plans as we develop, taking into account it's a robust master plan, to try and take into the financial circumstances, but also the new trends in planning, and also which function should be located there and what have you. So it's a political agreement, really, that allows that we can actually commit and do these projects. It means also that the investors, when they're working on these projects, there's a strong sense of confidence that this is possible and there will not be changing course. It's an important point here, I think, when we talk about these major projects, investment projects. These are just some images. In 2017, we had the World Championships, Sailing World Championships in Aarhus. I just love this picture because it's just the way those sails are playing with the iceberg building in the background there. And now we have this building designed by a big group on the harbour front here. Obviously, luxury apartments in this location, privately sold. This is the courtyard, private courtyard, first floor or second floor level, sorry, which everyone has access to who live here. And these beautiful small buildings here, when you buy one of these, they're quite expensive, but you commit to not having curtains or blinds when you're not at home, and you commit to doing 10 public activities every year, and you have to do them, otherwise you'll get a fine. But it's an important gesture that we're actually trying to encourage engagement on this harbour front. This is the space between the building here with concrete and timber, and it's made of burnt wood, which is a really interesting material. I'm very fascinated by this. And when they committed to design those houses, they had to commit to financing a new theatre as well. So that was part of the agreement when we did the master planning for the area. When we did the master plan, we encouraged architects and developers to come together, but they weren't allowed to make designs. They had to talk to us about what way of working and how they would develop location at that master plan for us in that particular location together. And luckily, Big, together with Gail's office, won this project, and they've had a great success. So this was basically the master plan idea, housing on the right, and as the local plan was made, the council decided we wanted to have a big hotel with conference facilities on the area. So the building on the left, also designed by big actually, after another competition with the developer, I've designed this beautiful mountain, which is a ramp which goes around from street level all the way around the building. It comes up here. See, these fantastic terraces here, and the buildings neighbouring, these are houses here, with shops in the ground floor level, designed by sled architects. And whilst we're waiting as the building site's going on, we call this the building site fence. It's a livable fence. So we've got temporary shops, cafes, restaurants, located along this promenade, and it's an incredible popular place. All these different functions. The developer has committed to do this throughout the project, and the local financing group, Selling Group Fund, has supported this outdoor swimming area in the plan. And then within the first month, it was back in 2018, there was 100,000 guests, obviously before the coronavirus situation. But it's an incredible magnet, very, very popular in the summer. And this is how the conference hotel and the conference hotel will look from the boulevard, the ramping coming up to the top. And whilst we've been working, the master planners had this space between the developments. We built this park area called the Green Line in the centre, also financed privately with some support from the council. So we've got these, each site, neighbouring site has also committed to help finance this project. This is from the opening. And one of the interesting things whilst we've been building the project, this fitness centre has grown. Another gentleman in the middle there with a weight above his head is an architect from town, and this is a picture taken last week actually, and you can see them laughing because I had to stop and take this picture, thinking this is livability. It's fantastic, very happy, health and well-being, greenness, biodiversity, fitness. Just behind these people is this building. It's just drawn to completion. It's called a Generations House. It's a building where we have handicap homes, elderly homes, assisted homes, social housing, student housing, and a large play school integrated into the same plan. So we're trying to make synergies between all the different groups. So we're talking about community within the building and of course around the building. And it's a model we're actually developing on other sites in Aarhus. We see great benefits between all these different age groups being brought together and trying to commit to making these community districts, areas in it. Another project just coming out of the ground, Nicolina Hoes. And this site just illustrates the next stage, which is going through local plan phase now. This whole area here is in the process of being developed, and we're talking about first sites coming to sale as we're talking now. New school being planned, and also some elderly homes integrated. And the whole area here has to include 25% social housing. So when we sell the sites, we have to make it available for that group of house builders to be able to buy in. So the money is reduce the price of the site for these projects. They have to be brought in on the prices for the other sites. So this is a model we're working a lot on. So some more projects here I'd like to go through, more urban. These four sites, this one here, the Goosebane area, the old freight yard area is well on its way. This one here is just being completed as a plan. And this area has just been public and made available for the public for commenting. And this next week we're having public debates around it. So this is the site. This is the first image which came in the newspapers yesterday. It's covering the old railway yard. There's a kind of an important point here that the National Railway Services and private developments and the council are working together to try and get this to work. We've committed to building 110,000 square metres, but we've said it has to be car-free, and we want it to be as green and friendly as possible, and also work cohesively with the small scales around the site. But it's highly dense in the middle, but we have these park areas integrated into the plan centrally, and we've used the idea of designing the urban realm, thinking about the way the spaces are used before we design the spaces, and that's why this image here is very important. I call it the Nolly map. You being architects, you know what I mean. Is that I said we have to have that map of the plan of the building, the location of the shops and the external activities located in the plan before we go forward. Because we have to commit to making these life activities on the street level before we get going and start building the district up. And this has been a bone of contention with the developers, because they really want to know how many square meters and where they want to put them to be able to make their project available. And I said we have to insist that we have to work this way, otherwise we're not going to get buy-in from the citizens or the politicians. Because I have a lot of support from the politicians with this way of working. And this is what it looks like looking from the railway square. I think there's a lot of possibilities. These are early sketches. There's always a terrible situation. I think this hasn't been presented before, but when it's presented now, it looks like it's a done deal. And the citizens, you know, they're very apprehensive, and they think, you know, we can't change anything, but that's not the case. We have to show something which has some kind of realism in terms of economics, but sustainability. But we have to integrate all the other social and cultural aspects of the planning too, and obviously the environmental. Next to this area, there's a project that's been on the board for like 8-10 years. It's called the Necklace, Pearl Necklace. And it's a project designed by Koba and Transform. And the site I just talked about down the left here. But this is a project we're actually trying to develop together with those different partners again. This is the old bus station, and something we're very keen to think of the whole area as one, so that when we think of planning, we're talking about holistic planning across this whole area. Close by, next to the freight yard area, we call it the new Borgekvarter. I can't translate that, but there's an area here for 15,000 citizens, which we're working on, been working on for the last 6 years. And these are the different sites which are being built currently. And these are just the images where the local plans have been approved and they're well on the way. And this is a site next to it. You see the ghost plane is just down here. This is 147,000 square meters, including education, housing, shops, and offices, mixed-use development here. This is the site as it looks today from the park. Very successful, everything's rented out or sold. Very popular, all the office spaces and universities working very well. So this good freight yard here, what is called K, because it's culture in Danish is spelled with a K. The creative quarter looks like this, has been for some years. It's whilst I've been waiting, whilst I've been planning, a group of people called Institute X, detours, have been inhabiting the area with lots of different activities. We've made some planning documents to help us develop the area. And this is, this is in the wrong place. This is that Seresby, where we have that some offices here. But I want to get back to the Goosebane, the freight yard area, where this is the Cultural Production Centre, designed by 3XN and E+N architects. This roof covers over lots of cultural activities, theatres, workshop areas. This building on the left is not insulated, but it's a very popular venue for concerts and lots of different activities. Beautiful space to wander around and come on top. But the important thing here, this is my town mayor, Lord Jacob Bunsko, and this is Mads Peter Lausen, who was like the leader of Institute for X, and they work very closely in relation to making their opinions aware in terms of the planning. And this is a typical site meeting. The two members from the council on the left, this is Lars or Camilla. Lars is, they both work in the area of planning and where we're selling the sites. And these three gentlemen are working with the Institute for X. And they're like the connecting arm between the people living or working in the area and the council. So this is my sketchbook here in the corner. I go to some of these meetings whenever I can. I just love this, where we're working together very closely. So it's gone from looking like this and like this. You say, what's that? Yeah, yes, you're right, it's a Viking. And there's a group of Vikings over here. I'll just go back to this image here, I just want to show you why. You see that area here? This area here is where the Vikings meet twice a week to have battles. And I just love the picture because people are sitting eating sandwiches in the evening here in the sun, and this group are going around. There's all these different activities going on, which they don't normally see on the high street in Aarhus. And I just love this melting pot. And this is how some people are living and working in this district, which is like grown from within. We like to encourage this, and it's actually become a very important integrated part of this planning, that they have the possibility of being here. The only thing they have to commit to now is that they have to make it so it complies with the building regulations. And some of them are having difficulty doing that, but we're working on it together. The new architect school is on the site, so it's well on the way now. Not very often you see a new architect school. Aarhus Architect School is very famous, and they're going to be moving into this property at the end of next year, the start of 2022, something like this. Local area housing. This project finished recently, very popular, people moving in. So another creative quarter in the Southern Harbour district, I showed on that initial plan, is right next to the harbour, but it's an area where there's industrial harbour, so we're not allowed to build housing here. So we call it a commercial cultural district, where there's a lot of homeless and people who are socially disadvantaged. And we have committed as a council to integrating them into our plans. And then we talk about social sustainability. This is very important because as a council we want to make Aarhus a good city for everyone, and we mean everyone. This is a football pitch which the council has financed for actually this group of citizens, where they can actually meet and have space for themselves. This area here is called Squalor Cafe, which is in English it's called waste from containers cafe. So they go around, I wouldn't say foraging or scavenging food from the containers, but that's what they do, and they use that for ingredients to making food. And it's a very popular place, and they're making it for these different groups and travel around the city, making sure they're soup people and what have you. And it's supported by lots of different organisations. Here we are doing a project meeting with this group, a different Greenlander group. I think we have 8 different minority groups in Aarhus, which we're trying to cater for. And the whole idea has been that we have the old slaughterhouse district here, and we're trying to include that scale of buildings into the plan here, whilst intensifying in other instances. One of the towers is going to be built of wood. This is by Linear Group, that's together with Wood Kilden, and it's a very exciting project. We haven't got much info on this just at the moment, but we see it as a very interesting pilot project for state-of-the-art timber constructions. They're talking about actually using reused windmill wings made of fiberglass as sunscreens on the facades. It's interesting. This is a hotel, and they're integrating a swimming area, health and wellbeing centre, reused bricks in the building, and all the buildings down here are 2 or 3 stories, so that's low scale, livability scale, whilst that means we're pushing the buildings up in height, so we're making this a much cozier area. As you can see, we're talking about small scale streets in intimacy. This is a thing I'm very concerned about. when we talk about these intensive developments, that we must talk about intimacy more in terms of the scale of the urban realm and the qualities we're making. So this is a very important part of the coming politic for architecture and livability. You can see there's a coal crane bridge here, which is reinvented and uses a connection tool up to the main railway station. But you see this intimacy has been very important here. So, and there's lots of reused bricks and small human scale materials where people are. While some of the other buildings, perhaps this one is made of concrete or metal materials, but the lower buildings, we call it Vancouverism. The lower buildings are brought forward, so they're making a small scale and bringing the wind away from the street level. So back to this again. I bring this slide into play because when we talk about climate and CO2, we have lots of different strategies on the board, and at the moment we're going through the political processes, talking about the energy strategy, the green strategy, and the strategies for going away from fossil fuels, but also how do we build in the future so CO2 neutral? Because we want a city of Aarhus scale to be CO2 neutral by 2030, very ambitious plan, and we're working towards that. Just like to remind you that our city has district heating. 99% of all our homes and offices buildings are heated by district heating. These are being renovated at the moment as we speak, all over the city. So we have effective heating all over, water-based. This is something called climate aesthetics. This is a pump station on Aarhusi, where we are actually bringing energy in from the sea, heat gain from the sea, and as a power station on the outskirts of the city, because there's so much development going on here, we made another additional pumping station. So we've actually tried to make something out of the architecture here, with an interactive facade with light behind and in front of the perforated sheets here, which look like ripples. So we've gone from fossil fuel for our power station to biomass, but we know that's also I wouldn't say peeing in your pants, but it's got a nice flavour to it. It's reduced our carbon footprint by 50% by doing that, but we know that you just cannot carry on using biomass alone. So we're talking and looking at now making these solar panel parks, and also how to integrate these windmills into our projects. The important thing now is that there's a lot of discussions, a lot of citizens and people living in these areas who don't want them, but we're making a point that if we want to make a global impact in terms of energy, so we're green and CO2 neutral, we have to start thinking in another way. So, of course, we have to have accountability in terms of design and where we integrate it into our landscapes, but this is where we start discussing what I call the climate aesthetics of architecture and landscape planning. We have many different ways of working with solar panels. These are some of the most creative ones, not just in Aarhus. This one's Sir Muller Design International School in Copenhagen, but all the other ones here are in Aarhus. And I think we're using our imagination and trying to make a point here. Likewise, when we talk about water, flood management, we have many SUD projects all over the city. All our housing schemes now have to deal with their water locally on each site. They cannot move for water, surface water, further down the planning. They have to deal with it locally. And of course, one of the largest challenges we're facing is this mobility. We can see here that by 2035, the use of car will probably increase by 20-25%. That's gone from 720,000 trips a day to 750,000 a day, and that's just not going to help matters. So we're working on lots of different strategies for increasing the use of public transport, cycling, and so on. Aarhus is the city in Denmark with the greatest number of new cyclists. And it's mainly due to the use of L-bikes. We've got quite hilly terrain in our area, And I must say, I'm overtaken all the time by these L-bikes, electricity bikes, and e-bikes, and it's fantastic. The numbers who would normally not cycle are starting to cycle. But we have a challenge in the town because they cycle quite quickly. And we've actually started making these, during the summer period, reducing the speed of people on their bikes down to 15 kilometers. And then saying although you can drive through the area, you have to drive through with respect to the citizens. So these different parts of the town have been brought into play during the summer. So we're making flexible strategies for during the summer periods where we can encourage mobility, going, walking, cycling, but in a slow pace. And of course, this whole greening of the city, biodiversity, is very high in our planning. The integration of water and greening into the urban realm is a win-win for me. The quality and the livability of the urban realm will increase because the traffic areas are often have been sores in the urban picture. By introducing these green elements, this is 3 years old now, where we have this beautiful different types of planting, which we're not cutting, and these trees in the inner city have just made it beautiful. And it's differentiating between the cyclists and walking, and also the cars. And this is the largest project to date, quite close to the inner city. Riesenbahn, together with Aarhus Water, we've integrated this water planning into the area, and you can see we have these sudden surges of water, and these basins to reduce the speed of the water have been very, very popular. And they're necessary, as you can see. It just means if we didn't do this, waste disposal system, underground system would just explode. And we have these basins here which use double function, sports activities. So we're trying to be multifunctional. On the outskirts of town, we're designing a new town for 25,000 people. It's on the light railway line, so this is part of our strategy. And we're talking about different ways of working with materials, reuse of brick, new ways of working with timber. This is a housing scheme by Linear Group, which is going to look like this. It's just got planning permission on site. This is all built of recyclable materials and with CLT frame walls, interiors. And it's really new for us. And it's when we do the planning process, we're not even sure that those materials that are drawn are available at the time of being built. So this is something we're trying to develop, new ways of building trust in relation to these projects. But CLT is the way forward. As you can see, this project in Lisbia for a housing association called Ringo. It looks like something like this just after it was built. A new one by Van Kunsten, also for a housing association, 4 stories high, combination of concrete, staircase, elevators, and CLT floors with concrete on, fire restrictions and so on, so also with steel elements. So it's a composite construction, but very interesting, very successful. Another one which is using concrete, designed by GXN and Van Kunsten, is for Liable Housing Association. This is with a cork facade and different uses of cork and burnt wood, but it's all designed for deconstruction, so all the different layers can be recycled. And it's a really big project for the developer called MT Huygo, and these different architect engineers. Beautiful teamwork, all community involved in that too. And most recently, the new fire station is going to be built in Lisbon, and it's designed by Kubo Architects. But they're actually going to make the facade of burnt wood. Just love it. Nearby, this scheme called Inu, private development, beautiful timber project by Loop Architects and Healthcare. I just want to go through these quickly. Just fantastic projects in the outskirts of town. This is on the same site, designed by Big, going to be built in timber, which is very exciting. This tech group, a small project here. Oh, and small is beautiful. This is the Greenland house made of timber by Rubo Architects, and this very fine project designed by Lisha and Pilman where there's 4 small farm building. It's been reinvented, and there's built these small units for houses, student housing, 2 stories actually, with a small balcony inside. It's become very popular with students. It's from the outskirts of town too. And we have lovely projects like this. The Doman designed this pair of architects. CLT combined with the state-of-the-art light geodesic structure, and reuse of materials again, a new housing scheme in the inner city by Kant Architects for a Housing Association. And the interesting thing is, it's the housing associations who seem to be breaking new ground, pushing the envelope. It's not always the private developers. So we are trying to push this. The private developments have to be more innovative in the urban sustainable agenda. One of the projects which is on the board at the moment is a new parking building in the Southern Harbour District. We're in the process of negotiating. This is the winner of the first round. We have 3 we're negotiating with, but this was the plan for making a car parking building for 700 cars of timber. So this is very exciting for us. We'll talk about the social sustainability. This area here shows the largest social housing area in Denmark, which is very challenged. This area here is blue. It shows it's got the lowest income area in Denmark, in Aarhus. The red areas are the wealthy areas. The blue, the dark blue are the poorest areas. And all these ones here, they're all social housing projects built during the 70s, like this. Now this image here is taken from a Jacques Tati film. You see Jacques Tati in the car here. He used to come in his films, you've probably seen it. But this lady is going to choose a holiday, and she's looking at a place in America, Hawaii, Mexico, or Stockholm. But you see, this is modernism's architecture. And I think it's ironic, isn't it, that there was lots of this built, and now we're trying to adjust them. So from this adage of idiom building, making buildings with some leftover space, challenging this is a housing estate with 32 of these blocks arranged in east-west direction. By bringing this mentality of thinking about the way of working in the urban realm, this is how it's been transformed. Another example where we're actually making a new road into the area, making this whole housing area accessible and for people to come drive in and out, but also with this suds lake, this lake for sustainable lake water treatment. An example here of trying to create ownership of an area where lots of slope. You see, this is the main access deck. You either go in this lower level, or you have to go from the deck above. And we've actually transformed that into this, where we're making 2-story homes by removing that deck, access deck, and making small gardens here. So this cant zone, or this edge zone, or what you call it, the threshold between the public realm and the private realm is a bridge builder. So you're creating zones from this area to that area, and conversely the other way around. And it seems to be working. Another point in these projects is that they're monofunctional, just housing. The council has just built this building. It's for my magistrate for technical environmental services. We have 1,100 staff in this building, also with magistrate for social and healthcare staff here, 150 staff of them, integrated into this new building. And the whole of this ground floor is accessible for the general public, with cafes and restaurants and eating areas for the staff and public alike. So I think people are very resilient. This is a concrete jungle, as you can see, but they're having a good time, aren't they? Seem to be. But we want to make a difference. So from this is another scheme called Bisper Hill. This whole area underneath here, it's full of car parking. Looks like this. It's quite harassing going through this area. We feel very unsafe. I don't think we need to. It's not because there's people on a foot and jump on you or whatever, but it doesn't feel very safe at all. So this, yeah, nearly finished. So we've done this. We've got rid of those green banks and made them more accessible and inviting. So we've actually transformed this area to something which we call livable spaces. And when we talk about experimenting, we have to, sometimes the politicians are very cautious in making a project, so we like to make tests. This area here, the road goes through here, was broken down during the festival week. We have one of these weeks, festival weeks every year, and the organisation encouraged us to make urban interventions and experiments, and this was incredibly popular with the citizens of Aarhus and guests. It just became an urban realm. The play schools came here every day, families came with their kids, they just covered the area with grass, and it became an incredible mecca for livability, people just coming in. It's right next to the town hall. This is a railway station space. Arhitektide covered the bus shelters here with this pyramided wood. This hot dog stand was made by this. All these colours are inspired by Bauhaus, and this lighting scheme here, there's an advertising stand behind that, were completely transformed. And activities started happening spontaneously. There's a stage on this side and on the other side. You could come out of the station here, you could actually hear birds singing. It was wonderful. And we're in the process of planning how does the light railway line go through this space now. But with this experiment in mind, we actually test things. For example, this space next in front of the cathedral, for 10 days it was made into a forest. We took the fences down after the building, the area was made, and it looked like this within an hour. Fantastic. All the time. And the neighbouring site here, parking area, because of that experiment, I managed to get permission to do this. We said it's going to be temporary for 5 years. We encourage people to use it in lots of different ways. It's very popular. And with that, I'd like to say thank you very much for your patience, and I hope we can have some nice questions and answers now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. Yes, I will ask, does anybody have any questions? Kas kellelgi on küsimusi Stevenile?
Can you wake them up?
Yeah.
It's difficult after lunch.
Kas annab käega märku, kas keegi soovib midagi küsida?
Could you translate it?
Hello, Stephen. Crystal here again. Just a quick question.
Yes.
Thank you for the beautiful presentation, but very, very simple question. Is Aarhus a happy city?
It is. It's commonly referred to as the smiling city of smiles. Some years ago, someone thought of that. And it's been hanging around. I think we have many guests coming to Aarhus, and I think during the 2017, when we had the European Capital of Culture, it was very evident from the feedback we've been given from the guests, and not just foreign guests, but citizens from all over Denmark, that people felt very safe and happy. The citizens were very happy to help. There's a kind of a certain sense of empowerment that the citizens want to do something good for our guests. And that's something about having a strong sense of well-being, and they're always with a smile, I think.
It's very good to hear. I can see we have one question. Is there more? Please, Katri.
Thank you. I think you don't see me. I can make something. But anyway, thank you very much for a very inspiring lecture. And through these images, we really can believe that this is a very livable city. My question is, how would you encourage our city planners to make such stronger standpoints and to explain politicians and and people as well, that city means people and living between the buildings, not just a machine for transporting cars from one point to another, and how to live in the cities actually.
Yes, I think it's a holistic approach, right? Of course, we have to have mobility and things like this, but we also have to be willing to take some experiments. And I think I'd like to take some examples from this Corona period, where I've been very inspired by the town mayor, for example, of Paris, where they've said, we have to encourage people to use bikes more. So they've actually engaged making much more cycle paths and reduced the numbers of areas where you can drive a car, so people are feeling more safe. One of the other aspects that's come through during the Corona time in Denmark at least is that more elderly people are coming out using the urban realm. This means that if we try to be more age inclusive and try to encourage different groups to use the spaces, and that means actually making them safer, because the cars are not necessarily safe. You can see that area where we reduce the speed of vehicles and bicycles to 15 kilometers an hour, that you have to reduce the speed to the people walking. So we have to have much more respect about putting people at the center of what we're doing. And I hope that you can see that when we did those plans for the harbour front or opening up the river, and even when we did the new music house, no one wanted it, or very few. There's a lot of abuse about doing this, and there's still some groups who are saying that we can't get through fast enough and so on. But you can actually find other routes too. So the point is here, you have to have the politicians on board to actually stand fast to do these projects. And this lovely image at the end here was something that's still going on in discussion. Is people saying, well, we should have the cars back here as close to the shops. But we have 2 parking buildings within 10 minutes walking distance that are not even half full. And it's interesting, I think, that this group who are very much in terms of having the car right at the front door of the shop group, and not being open-minded enough to allow the idea that citizens are much more central in the way we think about making the urban realm a positive place to be. Because these places, I go around on a weekly basis seeing how these spaces are used, and they are being used more and more positively, especially in the summer, of course. But get the politicians on board and try and do some experiments too. During the summer period where they've got more people out and about. I'm trying to push at the moment to try and get more people to stay in the town in the evenings in the winter. So I'm trying to make some very exciting, not functional lighting, but more effect lighting in the open spaces. So we're trying to gather money to be able to do things like that, to make it cozy and friendly, to encourage people to stay out longer in the winter. I know you have other strategies for that because you have snow and things, but in a temperate climate that we have, this is quite important. I hope that helps answer some of your question.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have a second question as well. What do you think of the pandemic we live in right now? Is it a challenge, an opportunity for city planning? Due to the new rules, we need more space, public space, more different spaces, maybe more variety of space between the buildings.
I think you answered your own question. You're right. I was trying to say that I've noticed, whilst we've been locked down, people are much more out and about in the parks, on the beaches and so forth. I've even started winter bathing, going out swimming very early in the morning. And it was the case of just getting out and doing stuff and getting around. And I think maybe this could be something that could be beneficial in the long run, that we want to be out more and about. When we talk about densification of the city, this obviously has a very important impact upon the way we design the urban realm. And I think we have to talk about the intimacy of the spaces. So we have different scales of spaces, different characters of spaces, pocket squares, pocket parks. A lot of citizens are interested in that, but also the greening of the city, the health and well-being aspect of greening, and the integration of water will give us some more spin-offs, I think, definitely.
Yes. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your lecture. It was very interesting, so applause for Stephen. Very inspiring, and I hope all of us gave some new ideas and something to think about.
Well, I'd love to come over and visit you when all this stuff is over. I look forward to that. Thank you very much, Crystal and everyone. Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.